Happy Thursday! Same shirt, different mini lesson. Okay, so here we are. Today I want to teach you that readers will understand settings, when and where the story takes place in historical fiction, by paying attention not only to physical details. So physical means that you can actually see those things happening around you, but also the emotional atmosphere. We've been talking a lot about the emotional atmosphere. That's the way that things feel to us, all right? So for example, if we're talking about World War II, right, with the yellow star, things are going to feel emotionally hard for people who are having to wear the yellow star. So I want you to watch me as I do this work in this text, and then I want you to practice, all right? So I'm going to jump into this place right here where they first put up the flag, the swastika, okay? And I want you to watch me while I read this section of the text. Like a fierce storm, war was spreading across Europe, and even good King Christian was powerless to stop it. Soon Nazi soldiers gathered like dark clouds at the Danish border. Their arrival in Copenhagen brought food shortages, curfews, and a new flag which was hung at the palace. The flag stood for war and fear and hatred. The Danes watched and waited to see what their king would do. King Christian sent a Danish soldier to remove the flag. So I'm going to stop right here, and I'm thinking that already the author is setting a tone here. We've been talking about tone and mood. He says, like a fierce storm. So we know that storms come in, and when they're fierce, they're going to bring about destruction, right? War was spreading across Europe, right? So we know that it's spreading across with what's going on with the Nazis. And even good King Christian was powerless to stop it. So even with their loyal great king, he couldn't even stop the war. So the soldiers, the Nazi soldiers, were gathering like dark clouds. That storm was brewing over Denmark at the Danish border, all right? So their arrival in Copenhagen brought food shortages, which meant that they were short on food. Curfews, which we talked about was that they were going to be having to come in at a certain time at night. And a new flag, which was that swastika that hung up. It stood for hatred and fear and war. And so the Danes were looking to their king to see what he was going to do. And so we're not just looking at the physical atmosphere. We're not just noticing the buildings. We're not just noticing the soldiers that are actually physically present. But we're noticing what people are feeling, all right? We're noticing this sense of fear sweeping through Denmark like a storm, right? The author is comparing this feeling to a storm coming in. It's brewing and it's coming in strong. That's a simile. He's using figurative language to help you understand what it must have felt like to those people, okay? So I wanted to look at another place in the text where we see some emotional atmosphere happening in the setting, all right? So right here, it says, the terrible news arrived quietly with leaflets that fluttered down on the city of Copenhagen. Effective immediately, all Jews must sew on their clothing a yellow star which must be visible at all times. At the beginning of the text, we know that it said that the Nazis used the star to segregate and terrorize the Jewish people, right? So already here, I'm noticing that this isn't going to be a good thing. So as I continue reading, it says, the people of Denmark were frightened. They had heard terrible stories. In some places, once Jews wore the yellow star, they were taken away and not heard from again. As before, the people looked to their king. This time, their king was as frightened as his people. Without the yellow star to point them out, the Jews looked like any other Danes. Gentiles and Jews were all Danish subjects who worshiped God in different ways. If King Christian called on the tiny Danish army to fight, Danes would die. If he did nothing, Danes would die. So I'm going to stop here, and I want you to think back to the setting, and I want you to pay attention to the emotional atmosphere. All right? So because of that leaflet that was sent out saying that they had to wear the yellow star, and the people becoming frightened, all right, I want you to think about how that leaflet was creating a sense of fear among the people of Denmark, and even more importantly, among the king. Why was it creating a sense of fear, and how do you know that using text evidence? Go ahead and turn and talk to your partner about that. Three, two, one. So I'm hoping some of the conversation that you were having with your partner, you were talking about how right here it said, if King Christian called on tiny Danish army to fight, Danes would die. If he did nothing, Danes would die. So either way, he knew that he was powerless to stop them. So he wasn't sure what he was going to do, but he didn't want to have to be a part of this yellow star terrorizing and segregating his Jewish people. So he didn't know what to do. So right here, the emotional atmosphere is creating this depressing and glooming mood for the reader because the tone of the book is frightening, right? For us, because we are seeing a change within the king. The king is frightened along with his people because he knows that the Danes have a chance of dying here. All right? So as you are reading your stories, I want you to be paying attention not only to the physical details, so not just the buildings in your story, not just the people that are in your story, but the emotional atmosphere, the tone, the feelings that are expressed by the author, and the way that it's making you feel as a reader. All right, so each time that you read a historical fiction text, I want you to be thinking about the emotional atmosphere created by the setting. Happy reading.